I have a We Are the They member, a good friend of mine, the man that did my Zen garden, but also the guy that was hired to pave over Charlie Kirk's scene. So we got a very fascinating human being, Mr. Dan Merrill. Dude, good to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
Let's just kind of cover this Charlie Kirk stuff first.
Okay.
And then I want to kind of get into more of your story and some other stuff like that. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, I mean, it's just fascinating. That was probably one of the 3 or 4 most impactful moments of our lives as far as, you know, a national event goes. And you got thrust right into the middle of it.
Yeah.
For a long time, the paving job looked like routine cleanup until the man hired to do it started talking. Because according to discussions now spreading online, the more people listened to what he said about the timing, the instructions, and the urgency surrounding the project, the more Erika Kirk's name kept coming up. And now there's a question that simply won't go away. Why was there such a rush to change the scene before so many questions had even been answered? What makes this story unusual is that the person drawing attention wasn't a politician, an investigator, or a public figure. It was a contractor. For a long time, Dan Merrill was barely on anyone's radar. Most people following discussions surrounding Charlie Kirk's passing were focused on bigger questions, bigger personalities, bigger controversies. Dan was just the guy hired to do a job at least.
So what exactly was your role? What happened? How did that all come about for you to be the person they called? I mean, I think, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, you haven't really told your story, but you've been getting a lot of like death threats and people that think you're part of the conspiracy. And I just wanted to kind of really get into how that all happened for you.
Sure. Well, so interestingly enough, I came and met with you about your Zen garden. That was right when it happened. I was on my way back to my shop in Provo, and I saw 6 different precincts flying past me in the commuter lane.
That's how he saw it. According to his public statements, when the work first came his way, nothing stood out. Construction projects happen every day. Deadlines happen every day. Urgent requests happen every day. But what Dan didn't realize at the time was that people would eventually start examining that job far more closely than he ever expected. And months later, that's exactly what's happening. The reason isn't necessarily what he did. It's when he did it. Once Dan began discussing the timeline publicly, viewers stopped seeing it as a construction project and started seeing it as a sequence of decisions. How quickly work was requested, how quickly preparations were made, how quickly attention shifted away from the location itself. And just like that, a contractor's story became part of a much larger debate.
I like to be useful, you know, where I can be help, you know. So I texted the guy, I said, look, I don't work on Sundays. My guys don't work on Sundays. You know, I'm happy to call you on Monday. What's a paver emergency? So he sends me pictures of right where Charlie was murdered. And he says, we need to put pavers in this place. So I called him, and the guy seemed like a genuine good dude. He says, you know, look, we don't have a whole lot of answers. We're told by, you know, people above us that we've got to put pavers in, you know, today and tomorrow. It needs to be in by Monday.
What made his comments spread wasn't accusations, it was the opposite. Dan wasn't presenting himself as someone with answers. He sounded more like someone looking back at an experience and slowly realizing others had questions he never thought to ask while the job was happening. People respond differently to that. There's no agenda to dismiss, no motive to attack, just a guy describing what he remembers. And that's exactly what made people listen. Some say the location should have been preserved as a permanent memorial to Charlie. But beyond that, the bigger question became, how fast were these decisions actually being made? The timeline became the story. Not the concrete, not the equipment, not the construction itself, the timeline. Once people started lining up events side by side, many felt like they were seeing something they hadn't noticed before. Leadership changes, public appearances, statements and memorial planning, organizational decisions.
And we've never done pavers, we've never installed them, and we want to make sure we do it right. And he says, would you come help? I said, 100%. So I went and got I got my trailer, I started calling my guys, and none of my guys answered. And so I started calling my other guys, you know, my brothers. And then I called another, you know, so I put together this ragtag team.
Internal TPUSA calls. Viewed separately, each one looked ordinary enough. Viewed together, critics argued they appeared unusually concentrated within a very short window of time. Whether that interpretation is fair is still heavily debated, but it's exactly why this conversation keeps going. Then another shift happened. People stopped focusing solely on what Dan did and started focusing on what Dan thought afterward. According to his public comments, he initially brushed off the speculation surrounding the project. From his perspective, he had completed the work he was hired to perform, end of story. But over time, after hearing more discussion and seeing the public reaction, Dan became increasingly willing to revisit questions others were raising. That shift caught people's attention because viewers take notice when someone's perspective changes. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually. And once that happened,
the courtyard where it all happened, it's now open to the public again. There's lots of people coming here, planting flowers, cards, things like that. And the university is already making some changes. They're replacing the grass where Charlie Kirk was speaking with pavers. And there are several petitions online asking the school to make this into a permanent memorial.
There you go.
Oh, look at all the thumbs up. Look how cute that is. Sorry, this is a little bit more informal than probably Charlie would be reacting. How sweet. I didn't know they could do that. I hate Zoom. I never like Zoom. Sorry, you guys. I just wanted to say first and foremost, my heart obviously is broken for you guys as much as it is for our family. You guys lost not only a boss, but someone that you looked up to, someone that you believed in his mission, that you also that you loved. You loved listening to his show. You loved hearing his wisdom on things. I'm sure some of you have also had very personal moments of where you sat down.
Dan's role in the story expanded. He wasn't just a contractor anymore. He became someone whose observations were being examined right alongside everyone else's. That's when commentators like Candace Owens entered the picture. Rather than focusing exclusively on the paving itself, she pointed to a broader series of events surrounding the aftermath. Candace insists that Charlie found out something that ultimately cost him his life. The argument wasn't about one single action, it was about patterns. The speed of certain decisions, the timing of certain announcements, the way attention seemed to shift from one topic to the next. Supporters saw normal responses during a difficult period. Critics saw something else entirely.
I never dated here because I saw vicariously through my roommate how terrible it was. Somehow getting drinks was the replacement of having coffee and breakfast. I personally would rather have coffee or brunch with someone than going, I don't drink. I find it unproductive, not because I'm holier than whatever. I just don't operate that way. But I always thought it was very strange how she would go to drinks with one guy and then go to dinner with another. So it goes twofold here. So if you're expecting to marry someone that I was blessed with, like a Charlie, you have to be the type of woman that will attract a Charlie. Are you going to church? Are you going to Bible study?
And that's exactly where the divide sits today, because stories like this don't keep going from evidence alone. They keep going because people interpret the same timeline differently. One side sees coincidence, the other sees coordination. One side sees ordinary decision-making, the other sees a trail of unanswered questions. And the online community? They've been anything but quiet. One user said, "What's the rush for?" Another came in blunt. "This is insane." We all knew it, but to hear it from the guy who covered the scene, and it was the FBI that ordered it, not the university, that's just wild. Yet another user jumped in with, "He is hiding something." And somewhere in the middle of all of this sits Dan Merrill, a contractor who probably never imagined that a paving project would become part of an ongoing public debate. Yet here we are, months later, and people are still talking. Still dissecting the timeline, still debating the decisions, still placing one event next to another and asking whether the picture they're seeing is the full one. Think about what it actually takes for a story like this to stay alive. In the age of social media, most controversies burn hot for a few days and then disappear completely.
This is crazy.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
No, and I know you're going to keep saying that. I understand.
Yeah.
Like, I know that.
No, I know.
And I know there's probably no magic string of words that I could piece together to procure some type of answer. But yeah. I think on a surface level, like, I'm not going to walk out of here until I say my piece. Like, I mean, y'all know this. I just worked a series of 80, 90-hour weeks plus for AmFest.
Yeah, I think
I've had no direction or explanation since we've come back. Our CEO has been assassinated. I've done nothing but been backwards for this organization to the point where I'm wondering if this is a prank.
It's not a prank. I would never do that.
So I'm just trying to understand. And
No, I understand. It's time to.
so do
it's
I
time
get to have a conversation with Dylan? Do I get to have a conversation with Justin or anybody, or
Nope.
no? And there's no explanation as to why I'm gonna let go, despite
Right now, we'll leave it all.
and you're gonna keep saying a different direction. But I'm trying to understand how I've met multiple times with my.
We're going a different direction with the team, and I have to ask you to leave now.
You have to ask me to leave property.
Yes,
Due to what, Frank?
because we're asking you to leave because you've been terminated and we're not.
But there's no explanation or documentation for this. I've never had one bad review from Dylan. I've never had one issue with the company. I've never done anything unethical. And so I'm sitting here understanding why my entire livelihood is being completely tossed out. I mean, I sat
No,
in this chair.
you're gonna do great things.
No, and I
your
plan
livelihood-
to.
I don't think your livelihood's being tossed out. I think you're
Well-
very successful.
Well, my paycheck every other week is being tossed out, Frank, with absolutely no warning whatsoever.
I understand. At this time, it's time for you to go.
It's time for me to go. Why? Like this is the
because
treatment that Turning Point is offering now.
It's time we go.
Frank, this is crazy.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from.
I don't think you do. This feels very heartless. This feels without emotion.
I do understand where you're coming from.
This feels completely without emotion.
This is still very coming from.
People move on, new headlines take over. The algorithm pushes something fresher in front of everyone's eyes. But this one didn't fade. It kept coming back. And every time it did, it brought new voices, new angles, and new details that people hadn't focused on before. That alone tells you something, because stories don't survive without fuel. And the fuel here has been the questions themselves. What kept people returning wasn't a single explosive revelation. It was the accumulation, the contractor's timeline, the urgency of the request, the sequence of decisions made in the days and weeks that followed. Individually, any one of those details might have been dismissed as unremarkable. But stacked together, they created something harder to ignore. Critics weren't pointing at one smoking gun, they were pointing at a pattern. And patterns, once people start seeing them, are very difficult to unsee. That's part of what makes Dan Merrill's position so unusual in all of this. He didn't come forward as a whistleblower. He didn't make dramatic accusations or position himself as someone trying to expose a cover-up.
I wasn't looking at it with that lens, dude.
Really?
I wasn't.
It didn't even cross your mind?
It didn't cross my mind. Here's the thing. You were saying stuff on social media. Everybody's saying stuff on social media. And quite frankly, I got so disheartened with social media because they just spin everything and they talk and fear mongering and hate sells. And I didn't want to see it. I knew there was videos out there. Right when I pulled into town when it happened, I Googled it and I saw the video from afar, right? Of Charlie getting shot. I thought, man, I don't want to see that shit.
He simply described his experience, the job, the timeline, the instructions he received, and let people draw their own conclusions. In some ways, that restraint made his account more powerful, not less. Because when someone isn't performing outrage or chasing attention, people tend to listen more carefully to what they're actually saying. And what people heard was specific, not vague, not general. Specific details about when things happened, how quickly decisions were made, and what the priorities appeared to be at the time. That specificity is what gave the story legs. Vague claims fade fast. Specific timelines get studied, compared, and debated sometimes for months. Candace Owens didn't stumble into this conversation by accident either. She has built a following by asking questions that others are reluctant to ask publicly. And when she turned her attention toward this story, she brought an entirely new audience with her. Her framing that Charlie may have discovered something significant before his passing landed differently than a typical online comment. It carried weight because it came with a platform, a history of pursuing uncomfortable narratives.
This guy got shot. You see it, you know he's probably dead or dying, right? I don't want to see somebody murdered, especially a good man, a father and a husband. So I hadn't been on social media. I had stayed away from it. My wife had been on it. And she was a wreck, bro. She was just, all that ugliness was just. So when I got the call, I thought, you better believe it. I'm going to go help. That was all it was. I'm going to go help these guys. He's asking for help.
And an audience already primed to question official explanations. Whether you agree with her conclusions or not, her involvement shifted the tone of the conversation. It moved from casual online speculation into something that felt more like an organized line of questioning. And once that happened, the pressure on every detail, including Dan's timeline, increased significantly. Now, consider the online reaction itself, because that's a story within the story. The comments weren't just emotional, they were analytical. People were cross-referencing dates. They were pulling up public records. They were mapping out who said what and when. One user spotting something, flagging it.
They want to do it right. He framed it in the sense that, hey, we want this to be done right. So that's why I showed up. So the first guy, the second guy that I hadn't talked to on the phone basically said, hey, look, we're not talking to anybody. We're not saying anything to the media. He says this is above our pay grade. The FBI and the state, the governor and the FBI, that's what they told me. The governor and the FBI said they want this done by Monday and we need to get it done. We're not asking questions. We're not talking to the media. And so I said, okay.
And then dozens of others jumping in to verify or challenge it. That kind of crowd-driven investigation has become its own phenomenon. And this case became a clear example of how powerful it can be when a community decides collectively that something deserves a second look. The question that keeps surfacing, what was the rush? Sounds simple on the surface, but it's carrying a lot of weight underneath. Because rushing implies priority. And priority implies that someone, somewhere, decided this particular task needed to happen before other things. Before questions were fully answered. Before the public had fully processed what had happened. Before the dust had even settled. And when people feel like important steps were skipped or compressed, they rarely just accept it and move on. They dig. Some viewers have argued that the location itself held meaning, that it should have been treated differently, preserved in some way, given time before any physical changes were made. Others have taken a more practical stance, suggesting that institutions make logistical decisions quickly and that reading deeper meaning into construction schedules is a stretch. Both perspectives exist. Both have been argued loudly. And the fact that neither side has fully convinced the other is precisely why the debate hasn't ended.
So I just, that's kind of my MO is, I've been in so many car wrecks and I got rolled over when I was 17 and there was 3 girls in the car. I broke my back in 3 places, got a traumatic brain injury, but I didn't have my seatbelt on. I wrecked, we rolled down the freeway. So we worked until night and basically until dark. And then we came back the next morning and started getting it installed.
Was there anything that happened afterwards, like any weirdness? Did you start getting people calling you or texting you trying to get more 100%. Of the story? Like what happened then?
Well, no, not, I think there was, the thing that felt fishy to me was after it happened, and I saw, at that point, a few people had kind of accused me of being a part of the cover-up. And I thought, so I started watching the videos. I started getting on Facebook and I'm like, well, maybe I was. Sake. Yeah, and I really started questioning.
What's also striking is how this story connects to a broader cultural moment. Trust in institutions is at a complicated place right now. When something unusual happens and the official response feels rushed or incomplete or focused on moving forward rather than looking back, people notice. And in that environment, even a paving project can become a symbol of something larger. Not because the concrete itself matters, but because of what the decision to lay it quickly, quietly, and ahead of so many unresolved questions appears to represent to a large number of people watching from the outside. So where does that leave us? With Dan Merrill, a man who did a job and then found himself at the center of a conversation he never anticipated. With Candace Owens pushing a narrative that a significant number of people find compelling.
What did Charlie find out? Charlie found something out. That's it, guys. Charlie found something out and it cost him his life. That's the truth. Okay? Charlie knew something. And whatever it is big and it is ugly. And deep down, I think we know what it is. I think we all kind of know what it is. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say.
With an online community that refuses to let the timeline go, and with a set of questions that, months after they first appeared, still don't have answers that have satisfied everyone asking them. Did a routine construction project become controversial simply because of the circumstances surrounding it? Or does the fact that people keep returning to it suggest there's something about this particular timeline that genuinely hasn't been explained? Why does this detail keep coming back when so many others have disappeared? And if this was never supposed to matter, why does it still? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now because this conversation is far from finished and your perspective genuinely adds to it. If this video made you think, hit that like button. It helps more people find this story. Share it with someone who's been following this case because they need to hear this. Subscribe so you're here when the next piece drops because there is more coming. See you in the next one.